What would you do if your own daughter sold your beach house, emptied your life, and left you behind like yesterday's trash? But what she didn't know was that she just betrayed the woman who owned the very roof over her head. Welcome to the mind-blowing true story behind the phrase, "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house." But what she didn't know was, her quiet, soft-spoken mother was actually the silent CEO of $1 million real estate empire, and she was done being underestimated. This isn't just a story about betrayal and power. It's about grace, strategy, and how the quietest woman in the room became the one pulling all the strings. Stay until the end for a plot twist that will leave your jaw on the floor and your heart in your throat. "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've already sold your beach house and your truck. We needed the money. Bye." That was all she said. No hesitation, no explanation. And then, click, the line went dead. I was sitting in the doctor's waiting room, surrounded by strangers with tired eyes and tissues in their hands, when my only daughter, Angela, called to drop that little bomb into my life like it was just another Tuesday. For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. Surely she didn't say she had sold my home, our home, and Robert's truck? The truck he cared for like a child? Gone? No, she wouldn't. But she had. 45 years of raising her. 45 years of scraped knees, bedtime stories, school projects, late-night fevers, heartbreaks, birthdays, Christmas mornings. 45 years of being her mother, and she had discarded me with the same cold efficiency someone might use to take out the trash. My heart didn't race. My palms didn't sweat. Strangely, I felt calm, because what Angela didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that her little act of betrayal had just lit a fuse. One I didn't even realize I had been holding on to. And for the first time since my husband died, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. My name is Antonia Brooks, and I am 71 years old. 6 months ago, I buried the love of my life. Robert and I had been together for nearly 5 decades. We built a life filled with love, simplicity, and sacrifice. The kind of life no one writes novels about, but one that meant everything to me. He died on a quiet morning over breakfast. He brought me coffee, just like he always did. Toasted bread, cream in my cup, just the way I like it. Kissed my forehead and said, "Good morning, my love." Those were his last words. Since then, Angela had been more present, checking in, helping with errands, even suggesting I get a full medical checkup. I thought it was love. I thought it was concern. But now I saw it for what it was. Calculated kindness. She wasn't helping me grieve. She was helping herself to my life. That beach house, the one my husband and I bought with decades of savings and sunburned weekends, the one where Angela blew out candles and brought her first boyfriend, the one where I washed sandy clothes and watched sunsets from the porch, gone. The truck, Robert's pride. Every Sunday he'd wash it, polish the chrome, and whisper things to that engine like it was a living thing. His scent still lingered on the driver's seat, also gone. Angela had erased my life in a single phone call, but as I sat in that plastic green chair, beneath the harsh fluorescent lights and muffled coughs of strangers, I did something I hadn't done in months. I smiled, because what Angela didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had a secret, and now, finally, I was ready to use it. They say motherhood is unconditional, that once you hold your child for the first time, your heart no longer belongs to you. It beats in their chest, suffers their pain, and rejoices in their triumphs. And for 45 years, that's exactly how I lived. From the moment Angela was born, everything I did was for her. Every decision, every penny saved, every sleepless night. She was my only daughter, my greatest joy, and my deepest vulnerability. Robert and I were never wealthy. He was a bus driver for the city for 40 years, the kind who always knew his passengers by name and never missed a shift. I worked part-time at the local library, surrounded by the scent of paper and quiet. We lived modestly, never poor but always cautious. Every dollar had a purpose. Every small luxury was a celebration. And yet we were rich. Rich in laughter, in Sunday dinners, in homemade birthday cakes and beach picnics. Our wealth was in the memories we created, especially at the beach house. Ah, the beach house. We bought it when Angela was 15. It was a miracle we managed it. Robert picked up extra shifts, and I sold handmade quilts at the weekend market. It took years, but we did it. A small cream-colored house overlooking the ocean, weathered, charming, and filled with promise. It became our sanctuary, our summer ritual. Every July, we packed up the old Ford truck and drove to the coast, just the three of us. That house saw it all. Angela's first heartbreak, her high school graduation party, her bringing Edward home for the first time, beaming like a girl in love. Later, their first Christmas as a married couple, laughing as they hung ornaments on the crooked little tree we set up in the corner. I cooked every meal. I cleaned every sheet. I folded towels still warm from the sun. That house wasn't just a property, it was our family's heartbeat. And Robert's truck? It was part of our rhythm, too. A beat-up Ford pickup from the 80s. It squeaked when you turned left and needed a special jiggle to start. But to Robert, it was a gem. He washed it every Sunday, without fail, even when his back hurt. Even when the sky was gray, he changed the oil himself and parked it under the same tree every single time. Said it kept the paint from fading. Angela knew how much it meant to him. She'd laugh and say, "Dad, you love that truck more than me." And he'd always reply, "Close call." When he passed away, that truck was all I had left of him that still felt alive. So when Angela sold it, without asking, without warning, it wasn't just a vehicle she discarded. It was him. His scent still lingered on the seatbelt. His work gloves still sat in the glove box. She didn't just sell a truck, she sold his memory. And the way she did it? Over the phone. 2 minutes. No empathy. No remorse. Just cold, clinical detachment. As if 45 years of devotion could be erased with a swipe of her finger on a touchscreen. I raised her better than that. Didn't I? After Robert's death, Angela stepped in. She brought groceries, helped with the funeral, sat with me when I cried. She even suggested I see a doctor. "Just a checkup, Mom. You need to take care of yourself now." She smiled when she said it. That gentle, nurturing smile I had always treasured. But now I saw it differently. Now I saw the strategy behind it, the timing, the kindness that felt, in hindsight, like soft manipulation. Not love, leverage. She'd been preparing me for something, gaining my trust, positioning herself, and I, so wrapped in grief, let her. When I think back, I see the signs, the subtle questions about my accounts, the casual, "I'll take care of that for you, Mom, just sign here." The way she'd brush off the beach house, call it old and too much work. I thought she was helping me let go of the past. Turns out, she was preparing to take it. What mother suspects her child of betrayal? It's not in our nature. We're trained to forgive before we're even asked, to give the benefit of the doubt, to choose love over logic. That's what I did, until the call from the waiting room shattered that illusion. And yet, I didn't cry. I didn't scream, because something stirred inside me that I hadn't felt since Robert died. Strength. Angela thought she had left me with nothing, that I was broken, powerless, alone. But she had forgotten who raised her. She had forgotten that while she was learning to walk, I was learning how to survive, how to sacrifice, how to endure, and most importantly, how to plan. The doctor's office door opened and a nurse called my name. "Mrs. Brooks, the doctor will see you now." Her voice sounded soft but distant, as if coming from another world. I stood up, clutching my purse with trembling hands, and followed her down the narrow hallway that smelled faintly of disinfectant and something sterile, like life paused between breaths. Inside, the doctor smiled politely. He spoke of good health, strong blood pressure, and the importance of rest. I nodded, pretending to listen, but my mind was nowhere near that room. It was 3 days before Robert died. I could still see him in his chair by the window, the morning sun brushing his silver hair. He had handed me a manila envelope. "Antonia," he'd said, "put this in the drawer of your dresser. If something ever happens to me, open it, but only when you're ready." I had laughed softly. "Robert, don't talk like that." He just smiled, that quiet, knowing smile that said he understood more than he let on. Then he changed the subject, as he often did when he wanted to hide something from me, and just like that, I had forgotten about it. Until now. Now, as the doctor's words faded into background noise, that envelope screamed in my memory like a siren, waiting, calling me home. When I left the clinic, I didn't take a cab. I walked. It was a long way, but I needed to feel the weight of every step. I needed to breathe the city air, sharp, real, alive. Angela had taken my car, but she couldn't take my resolve. The bus stop was crowded. People rushed by, each trapped in their own small tragedy. A man coughed into his sleeve. A mother scolded her child for spilling a drink. 2 teenagers laughed over something on their phones. Life moved forward, indifferent to loss. As I sat on the bench, I stared at the horizon and whispered, "You thought you left me with nothing, Angela, but you forgot. Robert never left me empty-handed." When the bus came, I took a seat by the window. The city slid by in fragments. Brick walls, neon signs, tired faces. Each reflection in the glass seemed to show a different version of me. The widow, the mother, the fool. And something new? Something I hadn't seen in months. Determination. By the time I reached home, the sun was dipping low, painting the walls with gold. I went straight to my bedroom. The air felt still, heavy with memories. Our bed was perfectly made, his side untouched since the day he died. The dresser stood by the wall, the same one Robert had built with his hands 40 years ago. My fingers brushed over the smooth wood, trembling slightly as I pulled open the top drawer. There it was, exactly where I had left it. The manila envelope, untouched, waiting. Robert's handwriting, neat and careful, spelled out my name. For Antonia. My heart pounded. For a moment, I hesitated. What if it was nothing? What if it changed everything? And then, with a deep breath, I opened it. Inside were several documents, thick and official-looking, property deeds, bank certificates, business papers, and nestled among them, a handwritten letter, Robert's handwriting, the same curves and flourishes that once filled grocery lists and love notes. My dear Antonia, if you're reading this, it means I am no longer there to tell you these things myself. Forgive me for keeping secrets. I did it to protect you from worry. All these years, while I drove buses and fixed engines, I was also building something else, a safety net. Every penny we saved, every sacrifice we made, I invested, quietly, carefully. I wanted you to have peace when I could no longer give it to you with my hands. The beach house is only the beginning. There are 6 other properties, including the apartment building where Angela and Edward live. We also own shares in 3 companies. You, my love, are far from poor. You are the rightful owner of everything I've built. But I ask you one favor. Don't tell Angela. Not yet. I want her to love us for who we are, not for what we have. When the time is right, you'll know what to do. With all my love, Robert. I read it twice, then a 3rd time. My eyes blurred with tears, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the papers. He had built an empire in silence. My Robert, the humble bus driver, the man who wore the same work jacket for 20 years, had been a quiet genius. And I had never known. Property deeds for homes in different neighborhoods, a downtown condo, a small seaside motel, and yes, the 20-story building where Angela and Edward lived, all of it hidden under a company name I'd never heard of, Robert Investments, Inc. And according to the final page, I was the sole heir. I sat on the edge of our bed, the house dimming around me as twilight crept through the curtains. I could almost hear Robert's voice in the silence. "You always underestimated yourself, my love. Now it's time to see what you're capable of." I pressed the letter to my chest. The paper smelled faintly of him, ink, dust, and something warm, familiar. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, one by one, like quiet witnesses to my awakening. Angela thought she had taken everything. She thought she had stripped me down to nothing but old memories and pity. But Robert, my sweet, brilliant Robert, had left me the greatest gift of all: power. Not power to destroy, but to choose. And that night, for the first time since his death, I slept without tears, because now I had a plan. I spent the rest of that night at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers that made my hands tremble and my heart ache, not from grief, not anymore, from disbelief, from awe. From the quiet realization that the man I had shared a bed with for 45 years had been a genius, and I had never known it. Page after page, detail after detail, Robert had laid it all out. His investments, his strategy, his empire, neatly labeled folders, spreadsheets printed in black and white, stock certificates with names I didn't recognize, and all of it tucked away in silence. He'd been investing for decades, buying properties when the market was low, flipping them quietly, renting them through a management company he set up under a name I'd never seen before: Robert Investments, Inc. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It was methodical, calculated, brilliant. And now, it was mine. I owned not just the beach house, but 6 other properties. A 2-story brownstone in a gentrifying neighborhood, a small condo in the heart of downtown, fully furnished, a coastal motel that brought in thousands each month, a pair of duplex rentals in the suburbs, and, most shocking of all, the towering apartment building where Angela and Edward lived, with 20 stories and over 80 tenants. Robert had put everything in the name of his company, but he had listed me as the sole beneficiary and legal owner. Not Angela, not anyone else. Me. And that wasn't all. He had shares in 3 companies, real ones, not the kind of penny stocks people brag about at family dinners. Real growing companies, tech firms, logistics, and one healthcare startup that had recently gone public. I opened the next envelope, a bank statement, multiple bank statements actually. I counted them slowly, 6 accounts, each in a different bank, all in the name of the company, and all under my control now. I added up the balances, my eyes widening, over $4.7 million. For a moment, I just sat there, a 71-year-old widow in a faded robe, sitting at the same kitchen table where I'd served pancakes and helped with homework, now surrounded by the evidence of a secret fortune. Robert had been a bus driver. He'd packed lunches in plastic bags, worn the same boots for 20 years, and all the while, he'd been building an empire in the shadows, and he never told me. Because he didn't want me to worry. Because he knew that if Angela found out, she'd start treating us differently. He was right. I thought about that phone call again. "Mom, we're going to Europe tomorrow. I sold your beach house and your truck. We needed the money. Bye." So cold. So final. She thought she was taking the last thing I had. But she didn't realize she was standing on my property when she said it. That apartment building? I owned it. The very unit she lived in? Technically, mine. And now, I had choices. I could walk away from everything. I could call a lawyer in the morning, file charges, reclaim my assets, evict her and Edward, and be done with it all. But something inside me whispered, not yet. Because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about understanding. It was about teaching. It was about letting Angela feel what I had felt the moment she hung up that phone. Alone. Used, erased, but I wouldn't do it with anger. I would do it with strategy. I would do it the way Robert had done everything, with planning, with precision, and in the shadows. and no one, not even Angela, would see it coming. That night, I folded every document neatly and placed them back into the envelope, tucking it away in a locked drawer beneath the floorboards of my closet. Then I opened my laptop. I searched for lawyers who specialized in property law, and I found him, Mr. Howard Peterson, a name I remembered from Robert's funeral. He'd shaken my hand and told me, "If you ever need anything, Mrs. Brooks, call me." Tomorrow I would, but tonight, I let myself feel something I hadn't allowed in months. Pride, not just in Robert, but in myself, because I had been more than just a wife, more than just a mother. I had been the partner of a silent empire builder, and now I was its heir. Angela thought she was stepping into a new life. She had no idea she had just stepped into my world, a world she didn't own, a world she didn't even know existed. But soon, she would. The phone rang the very next morning. I hadn't heard from Angela since that infamous call in the doctor's office, the one where she sold my life out from under me in less than 60 seconds. But now, here she was again. Her name blinked on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hi, sweetheart." Her voice was softer this time, almost hesitant. "Hi, Mom? How are you feeling?" I could hear her trying to sound concerned, but there was an edge, a nervousness she couldn't quite hide. "Oh, I'm doing fine," I said gently. "Just got back from my doctor's appointment. Everything looks good." There was a pause on the other end. Then, "Listen, I wanted to tell you. Edward and I already finalized the transfer. The money from the beach house and the truck, it's in your account now." She paused again. "It's not a lot, but we gave you 30%. We figured it was fair." 30% of my own house, of my husband's truck, the gall. "That's very generous," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Thank you. We needed the rest for the investment in Europe," she rushed on. "Edward has this incredible opportunity overseas. It's short notice, but it could really change our lives." "I see," I replied calmly. "And when are you leaving?" "This afternoon," she said. "Our bags are already packed. We'll be gone at least 6 months, maybe more." "How exciting. I hope everything works out for you." There was a silence. Then came the most condescending phrase of all. "Don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment, something that fits your needs." Fits my needs. As if she had any idea what my needs were. "Thank you, dear. That's very thoughtful." "I knew you'd understand," she said with a sigh of relief. "You've always been so compassionate. We love you, Mom." And with that, she hung up. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, staring at the phone in my hand, and then I did something I hadn't done since the day Robert died. I laughed. Not a bitter, vengeful laugh, not a madwoman's cackle. It was pure, honest, hysterical. The absurdity of it all was too much. She had kicked me out of my own life, patted herself on the back for her generosity, and now she was jetting off to Europe, thinking she was free. What she didn't know was that I had been watching the entire stage from the balcony. She thought she was the playwright, but I was the producer, and the next act was mine. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop and logged into my online banking. Sure enough, there it was, a deposit marked Ang Transfer. The amount was laughable compared to the actual worth of the beach house, especially since they clearly rushed the sale for fast cash. She had sold the house at a loss. And Robert's truck? Gone for pennies. To her, it was quick money. To me, it was an insult. A mockery of the decades we had built together. I walked to the window, sipping my tea, and watched as Angela and Edward loaded their suitcases into a cab. I didn't wave. They didn't look up. There was no goodbye. Two overconfident fools heading off on a romantic escape built on stolen foundations. I watched the taxi disappear down the road. Then I returned to the kitchen table where Robert's documents were spread out like a war map. It was time to make decisions. I could have called the police, hired a lawyer, reclaimed everything with a single court order. But that would have been too easy for her. No, I wanted her to learn, not just lose. I wanted her to feel the weight of her actions, the slow descent into consequence. And so, I picked up the phone and dialed the number written on the back of one of Robert's folders. Mr. Howard Peterson. He answered on the second ring. Mrs. Brooks, he said warmly, it's good to hear from you. How are you holding up? I'm doing well, Mr. Peterson, I replied, but I need to see you urgently. I can make time tomorrow morning. My office at 10? I'll be there. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in months. I even dreamed of Robert. He was sitting in his favorite chair, the newspaper in his lap, his reading glasses low on his nose. He looked up at me and smiled. It's about time, my love, he said. It's about time you stood up for yourself. I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Something had shifted, settled, strengthened. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even revenge. It was something more dangerous, clarity. Angela had cast me aside like a burden. Now, she would learn what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. She would learn what it feels like to be outsmarted, and I was going to teach her. The next morning, I stood in front of my closet longer than usual. For months, I had dressed like a woman fading quietly from the world. Cardigans too big, skirts without structure, shoes that whispered instead of walked. But not today. Today I needed to look like the woman Robert had always seen in me. I pulled out a deep wine-colored dress, the one he used to say made me look dangerous and divine. I tied my hair in a neat bun, added a touch of lipstick, and for the first time in what felt like years, I looked myself in the mirror and saw power. I didn't look like a grieving widow anymore. I looked like a woman on a mission. Mr. Peterson's office was downtown, in one of those older brick buildings with polished marble floors and brass elevators that chimed too loudly. A secretary with perfect hair and a pencil skirt led me to his office. He greeted me with warmth, but when I opened my bag and pulled out Robert's envelope, his demeanor shifted. Professional, focused, intrigued. I laid the documents on his desk like poker cards in a high-stakes game. As he read through them, his brow furrowed, then lifted. He sat back slowly, letting out a low whistle. Mrs. Brooks, he said, voice hushed with respect, this is substantial. Everything is legitimate? I asked. He nodded. Completely. Robert knew what he was doing. The company is clean, the transfers are documented, and you are, without question, the sole legal owner of all listed assets. And the beach house? He turned a page. Technically, it was never in Angela's name. She had no legal right to sell it. That transaction can be nullified immediately. What about the apartment building where my daughter lives? He looked up. That's already under your ownership through the company, but if you want to assume direct control, there are a few administrative changes we'll need to make. And how long will that take? A couple of weeks, maybe less. I leaned forward. Mr. Peterson, I want all of this to happen quietly. No one can know I'm behind it. Not yet. He gave me a curious look. What exactly are you planning, Mrs. Brooks? I'm planning to take back what's mine, but I want to do it on my terms. Quietly, carefully, strategically. He smiled faintly, impressed. I understand. You'll have full discretion. I'll make sure of it. Start with the beach house. I want it back. And the building? I want full control. And when that's done, we'll talk about next steps. That afternoon, I walked home through the bustling streets like a woman who had just crossed a line she could never uncross and didn't want to. Officially, I was still the grieving widow, abandoned by her daughter, left with scraps and sentiment. But in reality, I was the owner of 7 properties, multiple investments, and an apartment building full of tenants, including one who had unknowingly evicted me from my own legacy. And I was coming for everything she thought she'd taken. The weeks that followed were some of the strangest of my life. Each morning I woke up, had breakfast at the table where Robert and I had shared toast and laughter for 45 years, and then stepped into two separate roles. By day, I played the part everyone expected of me, the aging widow who waved kindly at neighbors, walked slowly to the market, and needed help carrying groceries. By night, I was someone else entirely. I reviewed financial reports, I read contracts, studied market trends, learned about corporate governance. Mr. Peterson updated me regularly. Mrs. Brooks, the beach house transfer is almost complete. The original buyers had no idea it was a fraudulent sale. They'll be refunded. Perfect. Make sure they get every penny back. And the building? Give me 2 more weeks. Then you'll have complete operational control. You'll be able to make decisions about tenants, including evictions. Evictions. I let the word sit there, sharp and full of meaning. Angela had given me 30% of my own property, while living in a building I already owned. She thought she was clever. She had no idea she was squatting in her mother's empire. And when she came home from Europe, she was going to find out. But I wasn't in a hurry. There was something satisfying about the silence of it all. Everyone around me treated me with the soft caution they reserved for women recently betrayed. The butcher added an extra slice of ham. The baker offered free pastries. Aurora, my longtime neighbor, came by almost daily. "Antonia, darling," she said one afternoon as I watered the garden, "how are you really holding up?" "I'm fine, Aurora." "And Angela? She really went to Europe with that Edward boy?" "She did." "And she left you all alone?" I smiled. She thought I'd be fine, and she was right. Aurora reached over and squeezed my hand. "If you need anything, you know where I am." "I know." "And I'm grateful." People talked to me like I was fragile glass, but I wasn't. Not anymore. I was iron-wrapped in silk. I was a mother with a memory, and soon Angela would come face to face with that memory. She just didn't know it yet. Every morning I played my role flawlessly. I swept the porch with a weary sigh. I watered the flowers a little slower than necessary. I let the neighbors help me carry my groceries home, even when I could have done it myself. I smiled gently, nodded politely, and accepted their pity, like sugar in my tea. Everyone thought I was just another poor, aging widow, left behind by an ungrateful daughter. And I let them think that, because that version of me served a purpose. She was harmless, forgotten, invisible. But behind closed doors, I was something else entirely. In the early hours of the morning, long before the bakery opened and the school buses began their noisy rounds, I would sit at my kitchen table, Robert's documents spread out in neat piles, my reading glasses perched on my nose, a pen tapping lightly against a legal pad. I had learned more about business in 3 weeks than most people did in a lifetime. At 71, I was finally fluent in terms like equity holdings, asset management, and capital gains. Mr. Peterson called me every few days with updates. "Mrs. Brooks, the paperwork is finalized. You now have direct control over the beach house and 4 of the properties." "And the building?" "We're just waiting for the city's final filing. After that, you'll be able to manage tenants, approve leases, terminate contracts, oversee renovations." "Good," I said. "I want everything done discreetly. No leaks. No questions." "Understood." There was something poetic about it all. Angela had assumed I would vanish quietly into some small rental apartment, knitting sweaters and waiting for birthday calls that never came. But instead, I had become the woman who owned her world. And she had no idea. The performance became almost enjoyable. At the market, the butcher would shake his head sympathetically. "It's a shame what your daughter did. I heard she left with that husband of hers. What's his name?" "Edward," I'd say with a sigh. "Yeah, Edward. Bad news, that one. Always smelled like cologne and desperation." I'd smile. We all have to learn our lessons eventually. At the bakery, the young girl behind the counter always gave me an extra pastry. "Here, Miss Antonia, you deserve a treat." "Thank you, sweetheart. That's very kind." Aurora, my neighbor and oldest friend, was the most persistent. She visited often, always bringing some excuse: a casserole, a new flower cutting, gossip from church. One day, as I was pruning the rose bush, she came up behind me. "Antonia, honey, is it true?" "Is what true?" "That Angela left you with nothing, sold everything and disappeared?" I looked at her, then at the roses. "It's true that she left," I said quietly, "but she didn't take everything." Aurora frowned. "I don't understand." "You don't need to," I replied with a soft smile. "Not yet." She tilted her head, sensing something unspoken, but she didn't push further. She never did. The truth was, I was living two lives, a grieving mother and a silent strategist, and it was working. But the deeper I went into this new identity, the more I started to understand what Robert had really left me. It wasn't just money. It wasn't just property. It was a choice. For decades, I had lived quietly, supporting, sacrificing, loving. I gave everything to my husband, to my daughter, to our little life. And in return, I had been underestimated. Even Robert, for all his brilliance, had kept me in the dark, not to control me, but to protect me. But now there was no more protection. Now there was only me, and I was discovering just how capable I really was. Each property had its own story: tenants who had no idea the ownership had changed, a motel manager who'd been skimming profits for years, a condo board trying to raise unlawful fees, and I handled it all. With Mr. Peterson's guidance, I restructured contracts, froze unnecessary renovations, fired the motel manager, and hired a new one, a single mother with a clean record and a fierce work ethic. I was rebuilding from the inside out, quietly, efficiently, and all the while, I waited. I knew Angela would return eventually, not because she missed me, but because life has a way of humbling the proud. And when she did, when the dust of her European investment settled, I would be ready. Not to punish her, not yet, but to teach her something she had clearly never learned: what real power looks like. Not the kind that shouts or demands attention, but the kind that waits, watches, and strikes only when the lesson will last forever. It was a Wednesday afternoon when Aurora came rushing into my yard like a gust of gossip-fueled wind. "Antonia, did you hear? Angela's back." I didn't flinch. I kept trimming the lavender bush, nodding as if she had just told me the weather forecast. "Back from Europe?" I asked, not looking up. "Yes, alone," she added, lowering her voice. "My niece works at the airport. She saw her arrive late last night. One suitcase, no husband." "How strange," I said softly, as if it were truly a surprise. Aurora leaned in. "They say Edward stayed in Europe. Something about trouble with the banks. Rumors are flying." I placed the scissors down and wiped my hands with my apron. "Trouble always finds those who run from the truth," I said calmly. What I didn't say was that I had been expecting this exact moment. I had known it was coming, not through clairvoyance, but through logic. Men like Edward don't build businesses, they build illusions, and illusions collapse. Angela had left for Europe with money stolen from me, funding a dream that was never hers to begin with, and now she was back, broke, alone, unaware that the apartment she was returning to no longer belonged to her, not legally, not ethically, not even practically. I waited. 2 days passed. Then Mr. Peterson called. "Mrs. Brooks," he said, "your daughter is back in the country." "I know," I replied. "Did you send it?" "Delivered this morning, handed to her in person by the building's doorman. She signed for it." "Perfect," I said, exhaling slowly. "How long does she have?" 30 days legally, but I imagine you'll hear from her sooner than that." And I did. The very next morning, just as I was finishing my tea, the phone rang. "Mom." Her voice was breathless, uneasy. "Yes, sweetheart. I got a letter yesterday. It says I have to vacate the apartment in 30 days. That can't be right, can it?" An eviction notice, I said, feigning confusion. From whom? From some company. Wait, let me check. I heard papers shuffling. It says, Robert Investments, Inc. Do you know them? The name hit her like a whisper of a ghost. Robert. How poetic, I thought. No, dear, I said sweetly. I've never heard of them. Are you sure it's not a mistake? I don't know. The letter looks official. I called the building manager and he confirmed it's real. I see. There was silence on the line. Then, Mom, I need help. There it was. Not rage, not defiance, just fear. Good. Where's Edward? I asked. She let out a bitter laugh, shaky and hollow. He's gone. Stayed in Europe. He lied about everything. The business, the investments, even the reason for the trip. He took the rest of the money and left me. I'm sorry, honey. No, you're not. I wouldn't be either. She paused. Mom, can I come see you? I don't have anyone else. Of course she could. That was the plan all along. Of course, sweetheart, come home. When I opened the door an hour later, I barely recognized her. Gone was the confident, polished woman who had sold my life out from under me. In her place stood someone thinner, paler, with sunken eyes and wrinkled clothes that no longer fit her body or her pride. Hi, Mom, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Come in, darling. You must be exhausted. We sat at the kitchen table, where Robert's empire had been laid bare to me just weeks before. Angela clutched a cup of tea like a child holding onto the last piece of safety. I messed up, she admitted. I messed up everything. It's all right, I said gently. You're home now. No, it's not all right. I sold your house, I sold Dad's truck. I took everything you had and gave it to a man who abandoned me. I said nothing. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I deserved to be evicted. Still, I said nothing. I don't know what to do, Mom. She was unraveling now, right in front of me. The bravado, the entitlement, the carefully constructed identity, all of it, gone. And I let the silence sit just long enough before I whispered the words she hadn't expected. You can stay here, as long as you need. She burst into tears. Really? After everything? You're my daughter. She threw her arms around me, desperate, broken, clinging not just to forgiveness, but to salvation. I hugged her back, not with resentment. Not with revenge, with strategy, because now she was under my roof, and the next phase of my plan could begin. 3 days after Angela returned, I told her I had scheduled an appointment with a lawyer. A lawyer? She asked, eyes wide. What for? I think he might be able to help with your eviction situation, I said calmly. She looked down, ashamed. Mom, I can't afford a lawyer. You don't have to. He agreed to meet us as a favor. Just come with me. Let him explain your options. She hesitated, then nodded. Okay, thank you. I mean it. She didn't know she was walking into the most important meeting of her life. Mr. Peterson greeted us warmly at his office, his usual calm professionalism perfectly intact. Angela looked nervous, fidgeting with her sleeves, glancing around like a woman expecting more bad news. Miss Brooks, he said, offering her a seat. It's good to finally meet you. You too, she mumbled. I hope you can help me. Oh, I believe I can, he said, opening a thick folder. But before we talk about eviction notices, there are some documents you need to see. He slid the folder across the desk toward her. Angela opened it hesitantly. The first page was a statement from Robert Investments, Inc. The second was a certified deed for the apartment building she lived in. The third listed the legal owner, Antonia Brooks. Her eyes moved quickly. Confusion furrowed her brow. Then realization crept in. I don't understand. This says, you own the building? She turned to me, eyes wide. Mom! I said nothing. I let her mind catch up. Mr. Peterson stepped in. Yes, Miss Brooks, your mother owns the building you lived in, along with 6 other properties. Angela stared at him, stunned. But how? She doesn't have money. We gave her 30% of—" He held up a hand gently. "Your mother has far more than you imagine. Robert Brooks, your father, was a very intelligent investor. Over the course of several decades, he built a considerable real estate and investment portfolio, quietly, privately. Everything was placed in a company under his name. After his passing, all assets transferred to your mother. She is the sole legal owner of the entire estate." Angela's lips parted, but no words came. Mr. Peterson continued, "Furthermore, the beach house sale was fraudulent. You had no authority to sell the property. We've already nullified the sale. The house is back in Mrs. Brooks' name." Angela slowly closed the folder. Her hands were shaking. She looked at me, tears forming. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew all this. And still let me come back. Still let me cry in your kitchen. Still let me—" "Yes," I said, finally speaking. "Why? Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I leaned forward, voice steady but soft. "Because you needed to understand what it feels like to be left with nothing. You needed to see the world through my eyes, not the day I became rich, but the day you made me poor." Angela covered her mouth with her hands. "I treated you like garbage." I didn't flinch. "You did. I stole from you. Yes. I abandoned you." I nodded. "And yet, I didn't abandon you." The room was silent, heavy with the weight of truth. She dropped her hands. "You could have thrown me out, evicted me, told me the truth, and watched me beg." "I still can," I said, letting the words hang. Her face paled. "But I won't," I continued. "Not because you deserve kindness, but because I do." Angela's tears finally fell fast and unfiltered. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't even know who I am anymore." Mr. Peterson rose from his chair. "I'll leave you two alone." The door clicked shut behind him. Angela sobbed quietly, shoulders shaking. I stood, walked over, and placed my hand on her back. "You're not who you were," I said gently. "That's a good thing." She looked up at me, her face raw and stripped of pride. "Can I ever earn your forgiveness?" "You already have it," I said, "but earning my trust, that will take time." She nodded through tears. "Whatever it takes, I'll do it." I helped her to her feet and we walked out of the office together, not as mother and daughter, but as two women. One who had lost everything and rebuilt herself from the ashes, and one who was about to learn what it meant to do the same. The air felt different when we stepped out of Mr. Peterson's office. It wasn't warmer, it wasn't cooler, it was lighter. Angela walked beside me in silence, holding her emotions like someone cradling something fragile and newly born. She didn't speak until we reached the car. "Mom, can we drive by the beach house?" I turned to her. "You sure you're ready for that?" She nodded. "I think I need to see what I threw away." We drove in silence. The road to the coast was familiar, the same winding lanes Robert and I had traveled so many times before, but today it felt like we were both heading somewhere we had never truly been. When we arrived, Angela sat frozen in the passenger seat, staring at the cream-colored house like it was a monument she didn't deserve to approach. "It's exactly the same," she whispered. "I thought I'd feel nothing, but I feel everything." I put a hand on her shoulder. "This house is still yours in memory, just not in deed." She looked down. "I reduced it to a transaction. You weren't the first. You won't be the last." We stepped out and walked toward the porch. She paused at the steps, bending down to touch a potted plant someone had left behind. "I told the buyers you were too sick to manage the property," she said, "that you needed to sell fast." I stayed quiet. "I lied about your health, your mind, your entire situation. I turned you into an excuse." I sat down on the bench Robert had built with his own hands. "Yes," I said simply. "You did." She sat beside me, quiet for a moment. then spoke again. But that's not who I want to be anymore. I turned to her. Then prove it. Not to me, to yourself. In the weeks that followed, Angela began to change. Slowly, deliberately, painfully. She didn't ask for access to the money. She didn't beg for favors. She didn't run. She stayed. She took a part-time job at a local nonprofit that supported women fleeing abusive relationships. She said it was the least she could do. I said nothing, but I watched her every morning put on her uniform with quiet pride. She even started cooking again, badly at first, but she tried. One afternoon, over burnt rice and too sweet lemonade, she looked at me and said, "I want to go back to school, study social work." I raised an eyebrow. "Because of what you went through?" She shook her head. "Because of what I made you go through." That night, I found the last bottle of wine Robert had saved for a special occasion. I opened it. Angela poured 2 glasses. "To what?" she asked. "To second chances," I said. We clinked. One morning, as we sat together folding laundry, she pulled out a letter. "It's from the university," she said nervously. She opened it with trembling fingers, read the first line, and burst into tears. "I got in, Mom. They accepted me." I smiled. "That's wonderful. But I'm going to pay for it myself." I blinked. "You don't have to. I know we do," she interrupted. "But I want to earn this. It's part of my healing." I nodded. "You have my full support." Later that day, Angela came into the kitchen holding a notebook. "I've been working on something." She placed it in front of me. The front cover read, "Sanctuary by the Sea, a place for women starting over." She looked at me with both excitement and fear. "I want to turn the beach house into a temporary shelter for women who've been through what I've been through, maybe worse." I stared at the cover for a long time before I responded. Robert would have loved this idea. She smiled, eyes brimming with tears. "I was hoping you'd say that." And so, we began again. Not as a mother and daughter clinging to what was lost, but as 2 women building something that mattered. We set up a foundation. Angela used her new knowledge, her newfound humility, and her pain to create programs, partnerships, and outreach plans. I handled the paperwork, the funding, and, when needed, the politics. We became partners. The beach house became a place of restoration, not just for the women we helped, but for us too. It became a living legacy. One day, while sitting on the porch, Angela turned to me and said, "You could have destroyed me, Mom." "I could have," I agreed, "but instead, you rebuilt me." "No," I said gently, "you rebuilt yourself. I just made sure you had the space to do it." She took my hand, holding it tightly. "I'll never forget what you did." "Don't," I said. "Not because you owe me, but because one day you'll have a daughter of your own, and you'll need to remember how powerful silence can be, how mercy doesn't mean weakness, and how sometimes love means letting them fall, just enough to learn how to stand." Angela nodded, her voice soft. "I'm ready to stand now." The sun had just started to dip below the horizon, casting long golden streaks across the porch of the beach house. Angela and I sat quietly, the sound of distant waves folding into the silence between us. No more secrets, no more masks, just 2 women breathing in the soft weight of healing. She had changed. Anyone could see it. Her posture no longer dripped with entitlement. Her voice didn't carry that subtle edge of superiority. Her eyes, once sharp with judgment, were now gentle, questioning, open. "I've been thinking about something," she said suddenly, stirring her tea with a silver spoon. "Oh?" She glanced out at the sea. "All those years I thought power meant control, money, titles, being the one in charge. And now, I think it's something quieter, something softer." I smiled. "Go on." She looked at me. "Power is knowing you could break someone, but choosing to build them instead." I didn't reply. I just nodded, because that was the lesson. That was the final truth. I had every opportunity to destroy Angela, to shame her publicly, to evict her coldly, to turn my back and walk away forever, letting the law deliver the punishment I had every right to serve. But I didn't, because I had learned something too, something Robert had always lived by. Power means nothing without grace, and grace is what separates the wise from the bitter. Angela had betrayed me, yes, but what would revenge have taught her? That pain should beget pain? That cruelty is corrected with more cruelty? No, she needed to feel what she had done, not to be broken, but to be rebuilt from within. So I gave her space. I gave her silence. I gave her time. And she came back not as a conqueror begging for control, but as a daughter finally ready to understand. Weeks passed, then months. The beach house bloomed into something more than just a shelter. Sanctuary by the Sea became a refuge for women looking for more than safety. They came seeking clarity. Angela didn't just run the program, she lived it. She led workshops, she mentored, she listened without judgment, shared her own mistakes without shame. She became someone I would have been proud to call my daughter, even if she hadn't been my blood. And me? I began to let go of grief, of fear, of the past. Robert's empire had become our mission, not to grow wealth, but to grow worth. And one crisp autumn morning, as we sat reviewing the next year's plans, Angela looked up and asked, "Mom, what happens when you're gone?" I looked at her, surprised. "Gone? I mean, when you pass, when I'm alone again. I'm scared of what I'll do without you." I reached across the table, placing my hand over hers. "You won't be alone. Not anymore." She swallowed hard. "But this place, this mission, it was born from your pain, your strength. What if I don't have enough of either?" I leaned closer. "You'll have exactly what you need, because you earned it, not through perfection, but through honesty, through failure, through rising when it would have been easier to disappear." She didn't respond, just nodded, blinking away tears. Then I said the words I'd waited my whole life to say. "Angela, you're ready." She looked up sharply. "Ready for what?" I smiled. "To lead." That night, I took out a sealed envelope and placed it beside her teacup. It looked like the one Robert had left me. She picked it up slowly. "What's this?" "Instructions," I said. "Legal, financial, strategic." "You're giving me the company?" "No," I replied. "I'm trusting you with the legacy." She opened the envelope, scanned the first few lines, then stopped. Her breath caught. "You want me to be CEO of Robert Investments?" I nodded. It's time the company had a face, a mission, a woman who's lived the cost of losing herself and found her way back. She sat in stunned silence. "Why me?" "Because you're not the same woman who took everything from me." She stared down at the paper. "You're giving me power," she said. "No," I corrected gently. "I'm giving you responsibility. What you do with it, that's power." That was 2 years ago. Today, Angela leads Robert Investments as both CEO and head of our nonprofit division. She's turned profit into purpose, developing housing initiatives, job training programs, and reinvesting into communities most people ignore. She's not perfect. She makes mistakes. She still wrestles with her past, but she leads with grace. And that's all I ever wanted. As for me, I've stepped back but not away. I still sit on the porch of the beach house, still sip my tea, still whisper to Robert when the ocean is quiet enough to hear him, but I don't carry the weight anymore because I passed it on, not to a girl trying to escape her reflection, but to a woman strong enough to face it. Power isn't in the money, or the buildings, or the titles. It's in the choices, the mercy, the patience, and the legacy we leave behind when we finally realize that the most powerful thing we can do is to forgive and still lead. If you ever believed forgiveness is weakness, This story might change your mind. This mother didn't win by fighting fire with fire. She won with silence, with patience, and with the kind of love that doesn't scream. It transforms. She could have destroyed her daughter. Instead, she taught her how to rebuild. This wasn't just justice, it was redemption with rules. So here's the final lesson. Real power isn't in revenge. It's in knowing you could and choosing not to. If this story made you cry, feel inspired, or just rethink everything you know about family, forgiveness, and power, tell us in the comments. And remember this, sometimes the smallest act of love is the biggest plot twist of all. We'll see you in the next story, where ordinary people do extraordinary things when no one is watching.